Deep breath out. Breath of fire. Take a deep breath in. Hold your breath. Squeeze your body really tight. And relax. Good.
Yo, what's up, man? How you doing this week?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well, actually.
Yeah.
As always, we're nearing the end of the school year, so for me, it's always a good thing, So finally,
Good.
starting to get some feedback, starting to get some,
Mhm.
what can I say, results from the hard work and dedication that you put in for the first 6 or 7 months. But not only for myself, but also for my pupils, my students. They've also being able to see some of the progress they've made, and unfortunately, you're not able to see it from the beginning, but they're starting to see it now. I'm starting to see it now. We're starting to get results, so that's always a good thing. I think being results driven, that's one of those things that kind of keeps us, moving along, trudging along, and bettering the species and bettering ourselves, for our legacy, which is what I want to bring. Which is the first question I wanted to bring to you. When we think about legacy, sometimes legacy in itself can be quite, I hate to say it, but an egotistical type of thing. It might be the lesser of two evils. We want to live nicely, or sometimes we're faced with the two options. Okay, or living, the way we want to, or leaving a good legacy behind us. But in both cases, I think that it can be something that's quite egotistical. It's something that we pass on to our children. In fact, I wanted to bring to your attention about the ideal of family constellations. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that before. Have you?
I have not.
Okay, well, just to give you a brief summary, and I hate to be reductive, but more or less, what the ideal is that um, the systemic constellations of the family is, I don't want to say scientific. It can be on the lines of parascience or pseudoscience, but saying that a lot of our pains, a lot of our troubles, a lot of our mishaps, and even a lot of our triumphs, have been passed down, from generation to generation.
Hmm.
The reason why I say it's a bit of a pseudoscience is because there's been nothing really proven for that. But at the same time, at a micro level, there has been proof through epigenetics that we do pass on to our offspring and to future generations parts of our experiences via DNA. Maybe not the exact, saying memory. Like, yo, I remember when I when I had those tacos, and I shat myself, what I'm saying, when I was in class, you already won't, your children probably won't remember that, but they remember other things, that's part of the survival technique,
Hmm.
passing on from generation to generation, how you survived and how you got through to where you got through, And my question is for you is how important do you think that how can I say that transferal of information, whether it's pseudoscience or whether it's actually scientific, but we're unable to prove it or disprove it as of yet. How realistic do you think that is? You know?
I think it's 100% realistic, and I don't even want to go into the science about it. It's just conditioning and habits, and we all are creatures of conditions and all creatures of habits. So, if our parents had certain habits, and their parents had certain habits, and their parents had certain habits from the neighborhoods that they came from, of course, you're going to pick up a lot of those same habits. You're going to pick up a lot of those same traumas, and I don't know if it realizes in your genes through like some studies in epigenetics have shown,
Uh-huh.
because basically we all very similar cellularly, or we're almost identical from
Yeah.
a genetic standpoint, our whole human
Yeah.
population, but it's just certain genes are turned on and certain genes are turned off based on
Exactly.
conditions. And so
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
just
Well,
from a pure common sense, it makes
okay.
absolute sense that whatever is passed down from our parents and our grandparents is we will have those same traits. And I don't know if it's so much more of a condition type of thing, or is it
Mhm.
actually genetically wired in us to have those same idiosyncrasies.
Yeah. No, definitely. In fact, a lot of people, in fact, this was something we talked about even when we talked about AI and running the future. I think one of our 3 or 4
Mm,
podcasts about AI, we talked about the difference between natural and atavistic. Atavistic being something that's been ingrained in us for so long,
mm,
societally speaking, that we almost take it naturally. And natural is something that we're born with, genetically.
mhm.
So my question is, how much of that, of those genes, or those epigenetic genetics, through gene metallation, which is passed down through DNA, which this aspect of it has been proven, but not only for humans, but for many other species on Earth. Well, species on Earth. That's the only place that we actually have species, as far as we know of. That's where a lot of the how can I say, survival techniques, being able to how can I say, adapt to your society. How much of that, as humans today, yesterday, or even tomorrow, do we have the opportunity of switching off consciously? That's my question.
I mean, what I don't understand. What do you mean by switching off consciously?
What I mean by that is, for example, a lot of things that been passed on to me or to you or to our sister, are things that were passed down from our parents.
Hmm.
How much of that, the so-called epigenetics, or the gene methylation, do we actually control by saying, you know what, bro? Okay, I know that this is one of those survival techniques that was passed down from our father, who was African American, who probably came from 5, 6, 7, who knows, 12 generations of slavery. But we wanted to stunt that. We wanted to attenuate that. We want to say, you know what? Enough is enough. You know what? I'm going to stop there now, because, like we've talked about this so many times. You've talked about this even more frequently than I have. This, this guilt, or this, how can we say, this ideal of, saying, of always being inferior. It's kind of like we're stuck in a case of inferiority, which we were, based on society, generations ago. But we've moved on past that. I'm not saying that things are equal, things are the same, but at what point, or to what extent, do you think we have control over saying, you know what, that's something that worked for our ancestors or for our grandparents or even our parents, but we want to break that cycle?
Well, it's always up to us, no matter what. Every human being has 100% responsibility to fix their shit or stay broken. So no matter what, so it's up to you. Do you want to fix your shit? If you have shit that need
Okay.
to be fixing, if you've been passed down some broken shit, it can be harder, no question about it. But it always starts with awareness. That's why
Mhm.
practices such as yoga and meditation helps bring awareness
Okay.
to what's going
Okay.
on and why you do certain things. I
Okay.
know a lot of times I do things in a before, like at an unconscious level, where I just did it
Exactly.
like without even thinking twice about it. And
Exactly.
then once I start bringing a little bit more awareness, then I said, like, why am I doing this? And then now I can kind of pinpoint exactly where it has come from. And a lot of it always starts early. Those seeds have
Okay.
always been planted early. And, maybe not even so much from my parents, even just from like our environment that we grew up in, that they had a lot of those others great grandkids of slaves and whatnot.
Okay.
So we lived in that community full of other black people who've been oppressed in Detroit, Michigan. So of course you got their seeds, put it on your seeds too. So I don't know if that's a form of epigenetics, but it's
Right.
maybe a form of cultural, cultural habits and customs and idiosyncrasies passed down from generation to generation. So that's the way it works.
Okay, because the thing is, I want to was what I want to do. I want to try to strip things down to its basal levels, and I want to say, where can we separate the idea that, saying, or let's say this: where's the line between nature and nurture? Where can we say that, what, this is how I am naturally. I accept it. I'm going to try to work on it consciously because I'm aware of it. Awareness is very, very important, and this is part of this mindfulness. Saying, even though it sounds cliche, but shit, being mindful and being in the moment, is so important. I hate to sound cliche, but it is so important. But at what point do we say, okay, this is my nature, I accept it, but I know where I want to change it? And where is that nurture aspect where, you know what, this is the streets. I learned this from the streets, possibly from what was passed on from me, from my parents, from what they learned from the streets, how to survive or how to advance, how to take advantage of the situation. How do we separate the difference between nature and nurture?
I mean, that, I mean, I'm not a scientist. I don't have any scientific background, but I think, like I said, it always starts with awareness of, like, in one thing about being aware, you shouldn't identify with anything. You should be saying, like, you should more identify with, or not even identify at all, but you should be like, this is what I'm doing when this happens.
Okay.
So you're
Okay.
just pointing out behavior
Stay
instead of
mindful. Stay mindful. Always stay mindful.
instead of identifying and saying I'm an alcoholic. Or you can be like,
Okay.
no, I notice when I get stressed, I drink alcohol.
Okay.
Or, I
Okay.
notice when I'm a little bit depressed, I drink alcohol, instead of saying I'm an alcoholic. When you
Okay.
identify with something completely, then you become that identification. And that is the essence of yoga and meditation, is to really strip yourself of identification of anything except for something that's limitless in nature. And you want to call
Exactly.
that God or whatever. So that means you have an infinite amount of potentiality. That's what the core essence of yoga is the union of that,
Okay.
the harmonization, the oneness of you and everything else. But if you identify with these certain habits, and some of these habits may not be the best habits, or these certain conditions, and these conditions might not be some of the best conditions, then
Mhm.
you are what you are. That
Okay.
that's the spell that you put on yourself.
Okay. Okay.
So
Great. So I have a question for you because I believe what you're saying right now. I think you hit the nail straight on the head. Because I've noticed that when it comes to relationships, even though I'm the type of person that being very introvert, I usually have very few relationships, but I notice that the few relationships that I have, they are strong, they are passionate, whether it's platonic, whether it's intimate, whether it's saying from an intellectual point, but it's always strong. Strong because I feel that I'm strong as a for my characteristics are strong, my personality is strong, but also for the fact that I probably lack the number of how can I say um external relationships. But my question is, like you said before, I sometimes find in that when we think about attachment, we kind of consider, or we let's say this, like you said before, trying to shed ourselves of these titles. But we also sometimes, when we judge other people, and I hate to say that, but at least I haven't arrived to a point where I can't judge a person. I don't. If for me, I think that it's for me. This is my ignorance. I think that no one, when someone says that they don't judge a person completely, for me, I don't want to say bullshit, but I just think that maybe they have a different definition of judgment than myself.
mhm.
But for example, let's take our father for example. My father, for me, was the epitome of sacrifice, uh, giving, giving, being present, right? And that's my experience with dad. And unfortunately, being giving, being saying that superhero, I attached those ideals to that person. So it's become impossible for me to separate. So I can't see another person being a superhero, or I can't see another person being, I don't want to say supernatural, but super giving, super generous, without comparing them with our father. And I think that sometimes not only do we do this to other people, we not only do we project this on to other people, but we also project this onto ourselves. Like you said before, you say, okay, I'm an addict. And a lot of people, when they say, okay, I'm an addict, you know what? I'm gonna try to, it's kind of like when you read the horoscope for that day, and say like, oh, today's gonna be a bad day, the weather's gonna be against you, and you're trying to look for all of the things how the weather is gonna be against you. And it's kind of that how can I say that placebo effect, that what you see or what you want to see, you will see. And the thing is, how do you think we can separate not only judging ourselves or identifying ourselves with particular ideas? Because being alcoholic, or being a passionate person or being a generous person, whether we consider it negative or positive, these are still ideals that, saying, that are constructs of the human psyche that we are attaching to, to individual souls, which, these are things that are incompatible when we talk about comparing. I can say Richard, you know what? Richard, when it comes to me, he's very, say he's very generous, or he's very, say he's very passionate, but not that Richard exudes generosity or passion. And a lot of times we do that with people. We give people also these labels because we're accustomed to giving ourselves labels. I want to know is how can we separate not only not giving ourselves labels, but from giving other people labels, if it's in our nature to always judge, even if we try not to.
Well, judging is normal and natural. It's like your brain is trying to analyze a situation and analyze a person. There's nothing wrong with judging.
Yeah.
It's just what we doing is we taking the easy way out, not only with
Uh-huh.
others but also with ourselves, saying this person is that, this person is this, instead of just noticing and being aware of what characteristics are being shown at the moment. And the same with us, and being aware and notice. And the more and more we can go to that place that we talked about before, called shunya,
Yeah,
that
exactly,
still
exactly.
point
I
where
remember.
we
Yeah,
where we release, attachment to our own script, to our own
exactly,
identity.
exactly.
Then life start becoming a lot easier. And there's
Okay.
nothing wrong with being aware. Awareness is great,
Yeah,
but there
yeah,
is a fine line
definitely,
between there's a fine line between being aware and judging, and being overly prejudiced and biased because of your judgments and stuff
yeah.
like
You
that.
can judge but not
Bias.
be judgmental. You can judge but not be judgmental. Because
I mean,
we're
I
judging
think it's
that.
just more. I think it's just more about being aware. I think when you truly are aware, you don't want to judge, because judging is just taking the easy way out. You're
Okay.
just saying like, oh, this person smoking a cigarette, he must be a cigarette
He
head
must
or
not care
whatever.
about his life, right?
Yeah, exactly. You just can't. I mean, it's just the easy way out, and it allows us to go into other confirmation biases.
Okay.
That's the way we
Okay.
like to think. No matter what, we like to do things the quick way. We like to find the path of least resistance. So
Okay.
when we judge, it's a path of least resistance. But
Okay.
truly, just to be aware, and the only way to
Okay.
really do this is practice. It's
Okay.
practice with everything. You condition yourself to just not judge and be aware of people and their conditions and stuff like that. And then, maybe you might come with a slight judgment. I don't know if it's something that you don't want to be around. There's nothing wrong with that. I
Definitely,
think we
exactly, exactly,
I
exactly.
don't think I think we can take it. We don't have to take it so hard on our. We don't have to be so hard on ourselves either. But
Yeah.
but ultimately, your goal is just to be aware without judging. So, and that
No,
takes
no,
practice, and it's not
yeah, no,
easy.
yeah. I don't know. I think that, like I said, I do think I judge, and like I said, over the last 4 or 5, maybe 6 years, I've judged less. But I think that that's something that's innate in me. Saying something that's built in, not into my DNA passed down through generation, but built into my DNA as a Homo sapien. Um, But the thing is, I try not to be judgmental. You understand? I may say, okay, you know what? Person X, yo, bro, I heard that, saying he did a bid for 5 years because he was selling drugs, blah, blah. I try not to judge and say that, saying that, okay, he's a bad person, but so much that, saying, as I would say, okay, because I find it's stronger to me. Not being able to judge that person, or to have my own thoughts or come to my own conclusions about that person or observations about that person is impossible for me. So I say, okay, this motherfucker made some bad choices in life, but I don't think he's a bad person. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that, unfortunately, this is one of the things that, Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about. Society kind of puts us into a place where we kind of unlearn, dislearn, um, badly or mal or ill learn those things that should be natural to us. So, for example, a lot of times schools and the school system teaches us how not to be so inquisitive or curious. Saying, so they say, oh, Richard, or for example, for me, because I was a very hyperactive child. You know, Rydell, calm down, don't be so hyperactive. But I wanted to know what was going on. Saying if I jumped from a roof that was, saying, that was or 10 feet high, I'm gonna break my leg. Okay, but let me experience that because I can't, you know what I'm saying? Because that's something that's stronger than me, you know what I'm saying? That's what I want to experience, you know, that's what I want to experiment with. Uh, but you know, society kind of, you know, gets us to moderate ourselves, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but I think they teach us from such a young age that we need to moderate in order to fit in. And being able to fit in means that you are part of society, you're inclusive. And I don't think that of 8 billion, 100 million individuals, that no one really fits in and no one is really excluded, you know. But, you know, it's the voice of that vox populi, of that the voice of the people, or the voice of the majority, which kind of says, you know what, he's kind of a weirdo, but what, based off of our the way we live, you know. But who knows that, you know, that's not something that is natural with us, you know. So the next point I wanted to get at was, can we, and I'm asking you this, Richard, because this is something that I want to do myself. I want to be able, we can even do this in another cast if you want to, because I think it's quite deep. But I want to forgive our parents, not because they did something bad, but I just want to forgive them for what they projected onto us. And I want to be able to separate that, you know. And I came up with a list of about 5 or 6 different things in forgiving our parents from. You can agree with that or you can disagree with that, you know. For example, the first one is, um, I think that I want to forgive them that they tried to raise us, because this is something that I also go through myself, you know, with my children, you know, that they tried to raise us through their own unresolved dramas and traumas and tribulations, you know, those failed plans that they had, they projected it onto us. You remember quite well because Dad always wanted us to be, you know, he always wanted us to start a law firm, me, you, and Rhodesia, Roundtree, and Roundtree Law Firm, you know. But that was one of his own unresolved traumas or dramas, I think, you know. Mom does it too, you know. And like I said, I'm not talking negatively about them, but I'm just saying that, you know, these are the things that, you know, as we grow up, I think we have our own tribulations, our own, how can I say, vicissitudes to live through, our own crosses to bear, and it becomes more difficult when we also carry those of our parents. What about you? Do you think that's something you could forgive our parents for, trying
I mean,
to raise us through their dramas and
I mean,
traumas?
I appreciate that you sharing it, and I always think about that. You know how Dad always projected his stuff on us, but you know, for me, I just come to the realization everybody is doing the best they can, and
Yeah, no, what they have, what they have,
and
yeah.
what they have, and that includes our parents. And so
Yeah.
for me,
I'm not
it's
saying it was
been
negative. I'm
forgiving.
not saying it was negative. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that because I want to separate from that. I want to take everything in my
Hmm.
44 years of life. I want to unlearn it. You know what I'm saying? Because I love learning. You know, that's one of those things that, you know, that's one of those, how can I say, that's one of my personal tenets, that every day I want to learn something new, even if it's something, you know, banal or trivial. I want to learn something new. And, you know, and I find trying to learn something
Hmm.
new is hindered by precepts and concepts and conditioning from our parents. Even, you know, if they
Well,
try to or not,
right, Joe.
you
I
know.
mean, no matter what,
Yeah.
the past is the past. It's always going to be in
Oh,
you.
definitely, definitely.
It's no such thing as unlearning unless you have like a lobotomy or something like
No,
that.
no, I'm
But
not saying
but
unlearning. I'm saying,
the only thing you can do is be
yeah,
present. All you can do is present.
yeah.
Presence.
No, I'm not saying trying to unlearn it.
Presence.
I'm just saying
That's
not
presence and
holding.
awareness.
I'm saying
Presence
trying
and
to.
awareness is the
Okay.
key. The more present you are, the more aware you are, then the things of the past, they just become like things of the past, and maybe you can use them, but ultimately you're more in the moment, and
No, 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 no.
then
The fact.
that's when you learn new things.
No, in
But
fact, I'm saying the same thing.
there's no such thing as unlearning. That's
No, what I
impossible.
want to say, is I want to say not hold future contacts, future interactions based off of concepts and precepts from the past. So, for example, imagine, for example, this wasn't our father, you know what I'm saying? This wasn't our
Mm,
household. But imagine that,
mm,
you know, saying we grew up in a segregated or racist home, you know? How many
mm.
people approach people from other races or other religions in a racist way, even if deep down they don't want to, you know what I'm saying? I don't think that what I want to say is that sometimes I find myself and I'm not sure if that's the same with you, but I think that, if we take some of the, not prejudices, but some of the biases that we grew up to when we go into new interactions, new relationships, that affects our ability to live that moment and to be, present in that moment completely. Obviously, the past is what makes us who we are, but it mustn't become our burden. I am who I am. You are who you are. You know what I'm saying? I have a million origin points that I can always say, you know what? I wouldn't be where I am right now if it weren't for that, if it weren't for that, if it weren't for that. I have a lot of things to say, okay, even if that had happened or not had happened, I would still be where I am, But the thing is that how am I looking at things? Because as I mean, this is something that me and you talked about on camera, off camera. We Things happen, in a, how can I say, an impartial way. If we take it as an opportunity, something negative or positive, that's up to us. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we take it as negative or positive based off how we were raised. That nurture aspect of our lives. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying trying to forget about it. I'm just saying that trying to realize that the way we were brought up, what we have learned so far, is not only it's not the only perspective. That's what I'm trying to say. Because oftentimes I feel that we get caught up in basing things off of what we already know. You understand?
Well, yeah, I just think no matter what, we're going to have, the past will always affect us. It's just, and
Uh-huh.
that's just normal. But
Definitely, definitely.
it's just not about, it's just about not focusing on the past. It's all about focusing on the present. The more you focus on the present moment, those past conditions will start fading away. And then
Okay.
when sometimes you can focus on the present moment and
Mhm.
realize that something from the past is showing up, and that's just awareness right there. And then you can say, you know what? Then you can be, you know what? This is how I was raised, and this is how, because of how I was raised, this is
Uh-huh.
what I feel about the situation. And
Uh-huh.
instead of saying, you know what, take it in it, this is what the situation is going to be, maybe say, you know what, that's how I was raised,
Okay.
but maybe there's other possibilities. Then you can start exploring those other possibilities in the
But
moment.
how can you? How
The
can
more
you?
the more it's just conditioned. The more you focus on the moment,
Yeah.
the better it becomes. It's just like you're playing a sport or something like that, or you're riding a horse. The first time you fall off the horse, or first time you play rugby and you get cracked really hard, you want to stop playing, or you want to stop making moves. But then you just keep on playing. You keep on being present. You keep on riding. Then
Yeah.
eventually, the past conditions won't affect you so much.
But I don't you think that you're saying that from a place where, because you yourself, like, I agree with you completely, and I feel very similarly to you. But don't you think you're saying that from a place, or I'm saying that from a place where, because we have gone through that individually, in groups, with other people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But how can you say that to a 22-year-old Richard, or a 22-year-old Rigel? Because it's impossible to know if something, or what is in the moment and what is not in the moment. For example, I see this very often, especially with people here who have parents who were born in the 1940s, say mid 40s, early 40s, or early 50s, kind of mom's age, and they grew up just after the Second World War. So they're always looking at the future. You know what I'm saying? So, like you said before, sometimes we're conditioned because of our parents to look at the past, but sometimes some people are looking at the future. In fact, a lot of people who were born in that generation, or have parents from that generation, they're caught up with, okay, let's stuff all the money under the mattresses. You know what I'm saying? Because you never know, because of a rainy day. Oh, there's a deal, there's a bargain in that place. What I'm saying, let's cop that. You know what I'm saying? Because who knows what's going to happen in 3 months, in 4 months, in 4 years, in 5 years. So they're constantly worried about the future. Sometimes the future that doesn't exist, that won't exist, because of how they were brought up, because of their environment. That nurture situation. In fact, that was another thing that I said that I wanted, that I've always tried to forgive mom and dad about, is not being able to teach us certain skills. For example, communication on how a person feels, or let's say emotive intelligence. I don't feel right, bro. That what you said hurt me, or I really like that. You know what I'm saying? I really appreciate you. I really appreciate when we do this. Blah 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 blah. A lot we'd have that, saying so much, because maybe
Mhm.
mom was one of many. Dad grew up in a age where, saying he was a man, and it kind of didn't, show their feelings. And I understand that, because he wouldn't have been able to survive and get to the point where he was able to reach us if he hadn't done that. You know what I'm saying? But also at the same sense, to try to separate. Okay, that's you, that's him. I appreciate that. Like you said before, I recognize that that's part of my DNA. But I want to create my own DNA now. That's what I'm saying about that separation. Not unlearning necessarily, but trying to transcend, and transcendence in the sense of transcendence of like you said before, being aware, because we were never taught how to be aware. That's why I said that me and you and I are privileged, because through our different paths, through our different trajectories, we've learned, you and I, to be more aware of the presence of being more mindful, but not because that was something that was taught to us. You know what I'm saying? Neither directly nor indirectly. You see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, but when you talk about the word transcendence, transcendence is all about taking a situation and elevating above it. So, and the only way you're going to elevate above anything, you have to
We didn't
full
learn that
heartedly.
though. We didn't learn that. We
You
didn't
well,
learn
you
that
did,
though. We didn't
we didn't
learn.
learn that, of course
That
not.
existed. We didn't learn that
We
existed. You know what I'm saying? We were
yeah,
fortunate because you and I, we can say that now, but 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it's very
well, that's
probable that either you or I knew that was a possibility. You know what I'm saying?
mhm. Well, I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, or however you want to look at it,
I think it's
that's
fortunate.
or that's why a lot of young people today are super anxious and depressed and stuff like that, because they weren't given those tools at an early age, especially when you're highly emotional at a young age.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I think our emotion stays the same. I think a lot of times people just sweep it under the rug,
Yeah,
and then until they finally have a heart attack or a stroke or something like that.
exactly.
But but when you're young, you really just can't have you have minimal control over your emotions. So, you know,
Exactly.
people we know a lot of people don't have these tools. A lot of people
Yeah.
today who are older, they don't have the tools.
Yeah,
It's
they don't. They don't.
unfortunate.
I said we're
Because
lucky. We're fortunate.
Western culture, it doesn't really prioritize mental
Yeah.
health like that, or inner. I'm going to say mental health, inner health. We're all about like external everything, external health. I got good
I love
biceps.
that.
I got 6-pack abs. I got a
Yeah.
Ferrari. I'm
Yeah.
successful, but not
Yeah.
about inner success.
I love that inner health,
Yeah,
because yeah,
so
like you said before, mental health. Sometimes I think because, in fact, like you said before, I think that unfortunately, and I hate to say that, but I think that it becomes trendy.
well, of course it's
Mental
trendy.
health was
Yeah.
never a thing. Like, oh yeah, mental health, mental health. But like you said before, it's that inner health. You know what I'm saying? How are you going? How are you going to live with, or how are you going to deal with what you've known, what you've learned? You know what I'm saying? And try to take that, appreciate it, whether it's good or bad, and try to become mindful and aware of that. You know what I'm saying? Like I said before, I think that you and I are quite fortunate in this case.
Mhm.
I'm always working on it. I think that's something that you always have to work on, for every moment that you're living. Because there are moments when that mindfulness is spot on, and you like, saying you just hit jackpot every day. And other times like, damn son, I'm aware as hell, but things not going my way. You know what I'm saying? But that's also, I think, part of the growing process also. But a lot of times, a lot of people who don't have that fortune that we have of being able to arrive to that point in our lives, they never see it like that, and that can be some of those things that you said that makes them more anxious, makes them depressed, makes them miserable, and even desperate at times. Make them think, okay, you know what, I've tried, but you know, and I think I like to think of it from an Epicurean point of view. A lot of times, nothing lasts forever. And even that pain and that struggle will pass, just like that happiness, that euphoria, that will pass. Also, the thing
Mhm.
is just to be aware and live that moment, how you live it, even if you consider it pain and struggle, and think about how you got to that place. How does that place make you feel? And these are some of the things that I think that I learned only after a lot of work on myself. Saying whether it's saying through help of others or myself. Saying like you said before, self meditation, or just contemplating by yourself. Sitting at home with the
Mhm.
lights off or with the TV off. Saying just thinking for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Saying just going
Mhm.
off into saying thinking about different things. And I think that that's also, for me personally, that's also a type of meditation for me too. But these are things that I say that these are part of our own responsibility. And it's very difficult to find our own responsibility when we have a supposed or an etiquette of how we should have responsibility. I'm not saying that saying it's a bad thing to be a gentleman, blah 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 blah. But if that's what you were taught, but you don't really feel that way, why are you a gentleman?
Mm,
Okay, even the other way, what I'm saying. If you're taught to be, saying aggressive, blah 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 blah, that's the right thing to do. But you don't feel that. Why? Then, what I'm saying. But I think that
mm,
separating and taking that responsibility, accepting our parents for who they were, accepting them for them being raised by parents who had similar situations where they were raising them with the tools that they had and equipment that they had at their disposition, at their
mm.
disposal. You know what I'm saying? But say, you know what? I know mom and dad had this at their disposal. I accept it, like you said before. I'm aware of it, but now it's time for me to make my path. It's time for me to, find my, my ways, so that I don't imprint it or I don't pass it on to other people per se, but then I live my own. You know what I'm saying? If other people want to follow that same way, that's up to us. That's the way I look at it.
Well, yeah, but ultimately, it's up to us to fix our own shit. That's what
No,
I believe in that wholeheartedly.
that's the
I
point I want
believe
to
in
get
it
at. That's the
wholeheartedly.
point I want to get
So, but a lot of people go through life. That's why trauma is passed on from generation to generation because it keeps on passing on. It's a
at.
cycle. But hopefully we live in a society where inner health is more celebrated and more
Yeah,
and not and it's a practice like everything else. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a moment to moment
yeah.
practice. You always have to be aware, and you
And
have
you
to
always
use.
have to work on it.
You
You
always
always have
have
to
to
work
work
on it.
on. You always have to
Yeah,
you have certain tools you can use to help you get better with that. So
uh-huh.
I think that's I mean that's it. I mean, it's work. For me, I think it's getting easier now because I work on it so hard. But that's what makes it effortless. Not
No,
because of the
definitely,
fact
definitely.
not because of that because it's become effortless to me. It's because I practice it a lot, and
Exactly,
and that's what it comes down to. It's always about practice.
exactly.
They say it takes 10,000 hours to perfect something. So you got to give yourself
I think it takes a
10,000 hours
lifetime
of being
to perfect something.
of being
It takes a
mindful.
lifetime to perfect something.
At least 10,000 hours, but at least to start getting on the path. So
No,
it's
definitely, definitely,
being
definitely.
yeah. So it just like if you want to throw a baseball, you want to throw a basketball, you want to learn how to make money on the stock market, whatever.
Exactly.
You know. A lot of those things aren't necessarily going to happen, but if you practice how to be mindful enough, you'll start
Yeah.
becoming more mindful. You'll start
Oh,
becoming more
definitely, definitely.
aware. But there are no shortcuts to it. People
Yes.
want the shortcuts, and I get it.
They always
Maybe
want the
more
shortcuts. Yeah.
Eastern society, like especially ancient Eastern society, was more promoting of this inner
Uh-huh.
engineering
Oh,
and this
definitely.
inner health, as we talked about, or inner wellness. And now it's just
Exactly.
like everything is surface and external. And so the
Uh-huh.
more we make, I think, it internal with our dialogue with ourselves and stuff like that, I think
Mhm.
I think life becomes a lot easier. At least for me, it has. So I'm not saying
Okay.
that it's perfect. Of course, I have
Oh,
my
definitely not.
trauma,
No.
my drama. Some of it is
Exactly.
some of the old stuff that my parents put on us too. But
Exactly.
I'm able to realize it right
Exactly.
away,
You're able to
and then
realize that.
and
That's
then
what I'm
then,
saying.
then,
You're
then
able to
I
realize it
then I can make
and
that
separate yourself from
then,
it.
then I can make that choice. Do I want to continue this
Exactly.
cycle, or I want to just
Exactly.
for this moment break that cycle? And maybe every now and then
Exactly.
I will continue the cycle. But the more and more you start breaking the cycle, eventually that change starts breaking. So
Yeah.
it's no quick fix. It's no quick
No,
fix.
no, no, definitely. And it's not a quick fix, and it's not a fix. I think
Yeah,
that the thing is, if we think is there's a cure, there's no cure. There's always
yeah,
therapy. You know what I'm saying? That
yeah,
inner that like you said that inner health requires inner therapy. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, and I
yeah,
love that term, inner health. Like seriously, I'm gonna start using it from now on
yeah.
though, because we always talk about mental health, but like I said, I think that's been quite saturated. You know what I'm saying? In the past 5 or 6 years, it's
Yeah.
kind of like when we're using, saying BLM, Black Lives Matter, or saying Me Too
Mhm.
movements, but it's got to the point where it's been saturated and saying
What?
exaggerated,
Well,
but
I agree with you. I don't like the way they use mental health because some people have real psychological problems, and
it
it's
really,
kind of
yeah,
like it's kind of almost downplaying their psychological problems
exactly. It's being
for
reductive.
people
It's being very reductive.
for people who are just have general anxiety and general
Yeah,
stress. And so, and then it's
yeah,
not, and I'm not downplaying people that have general anxiety and general stress. That can be very bad too. But
yeah.
that's not a real psychological disorder like being bipolar or something like that.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
So or mania or psychotic or something like that, and we're trying to clump them all together, and that's not fair
Exactly.
to that's not fair to those people who have those conditions. But we should have good mental health, physical health, inner health,
Yeah.
all that health, but instead of taking a drug after the fact, we have adverse conditions.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
but
One quick question I want to ask you. I mean, we're already running short on time, but we can even bring it up another time, not next week, but anytime you want
yeah,
to, because
let's pick
it's
it up.
dealing with these things. We're talking about generational trauma and generational triumph being passed down. Saying from a genetic point of view, from DNA or epigenetics, etc. I would like to also talk to you in the future, not necessarily right now, about even with about somatic frequencies and somatics. So, for example, the bowl that you use, which vibrates at different frequencies, how we vibrate at different frequencies, how our DNA even reacts to different frequencies. That's something that I would like to talk to you about. I'm sure on another time, because I think that this is also connected to that genetic, or like I said, I'm not sure if it's scientific yet, and we're still unable to visualize that, or if we were able to I don't know, move forward with that and to do more research into that. You know what I'm saying? So
Well,
yeah,
our body is like the matrix. It's like we're one big battery. Our nervous system
oh, no.
gives electrical impulses all the time, and it's according to the sounds that you hear,
Different
the overact
resonances. Yes,
the
exactly.
overactivity of the mind, the overactivity of behavior and stuff like that can elevate or kind of like elevate our frequency, so where we're always anxious and always disturbed and always irritable.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
especially if you be around other people like that, it's contagious. It rubs off. And if you're in environments where the noise was very noisy all the time, and it's
Yeah,
not soothing music going on or no music whatsoever,
exactly.
all that stuff affects up our frequency and affects our vibration. But
Yeah.
we can definitely talk about that more often. And
Okay.
why don't we say that for next week? How does that sound?
Okay. That sounds like a plan, brother.
Okay, I talk to you then. Okay.
All right, man. Talk to you
Okay. See you
next week.
later.
Have a good
Okay.
one.
Bye.
Bye.
Peace.